Okay, and next up, we're going to have a panel on the Uranium ISR site visit in Nebraska. So while they're setting up the stage, I'll just give a little bit of background about what's going on in the community, the people that are living closest to the proposed project site of the Grants ISR project. So we're located close to a town called San Mateo. And then the largest cities are Grants, New Mexico, of course, and then the town of Milan. Very recently, earlier this year, the City of Grants City Council passed a resolution in support of uranium ISR overall, and then Milan Town Council passed a resolution just last month affirming the same. And that didn't just happen overnight. We have been really focused on having open houses, engaging with the Chamber of Commerce, giving presentations to the City Council, to the public overall. And we got a lot of very candid feedback when we first started doing this. The very first one we did was November 2024. And we got a lot of candid feedback. And one of the most vocal people is going to be on the panel today that was vocal, asking really hard questions. And we knew that, again, talk is cheap. We have to show with actions what an ISR project really looks like, what it will really mean to the community, and what they can expect if it were to move forward. So the panel up here, this is really exciting because they're going to get to give you their feedback firsthand about what they saw, what they experienced, and what their impressions were. And we hope that this is just the first of many site visits that we, both through the Clean Energy Association of New Mexico, but also Grants ISR, can sponsor, whether that be Crow Butte, Nebraska, whether that be in South Texas, whether that be at our affiliated sites in South Australia. The invite remains, especially for our tribal partners, and especially for our community neighbors, especially for our regulators, and especially for those that have a vested interest and a stake in the potential projects moving forward. So with that, I'd like to welcome up the panel. The panel is going to be led by Grants Energy's Community Engagement and Environmental Protection Manager, Charles Lundstrom. We also have a resident of Grants, New Mexico. We have George Garcia, New Mexico resident of San Mateo, Stanley Michael, and we have the City Manager of Grants, New Mexico, Andrew Valencia. Thank you.
Thank you, Daria. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Tamaya and Clean Energy for having us. My name is Charles Lundstrom. I'm like Daria said, the Community Engagement and Environmental Protection Manager for Grants Energy. I'm a lifelong New Mexican, grew up in Grants, New Mexico State, Central Missouri, and 25 years as a state regulator. I spent 25 years protecting the health and safety and the environment of the citizens of the state of New Mexico. So when this project came up, I talked to a lot of people about it, and it looked clean and safe to me. I spent a lot of time, again, looking at the ins and outs of it, and it seems like it's going to be a very good deal. But this position is about community outreach, some technical stuff, but mostly letting the people know what we're doing. Having a transparent process so questions can be asked and answers, the best answers we can give, we'll give it. Nobody's lost on the legacy issue. Growing up in Grants, my father worked for Kerr-McGee Nuclear for 35 years. Every day at that time, you know, the late 70s, early 80s and all that, it was a great place to live. No, not a better place on earth as far as I'm concerned. All these gentlemen here grew up in Grants. I've known them all for, too many years that I care to mention, but again, they're good people. This presentation is about what these guys saw at the Crow Butte facility. And that's kind of where I want to leave that. Let me talk a little bit more about me, and then we'll go to our panelists here. Again, worked with the Environment Department for 25 years, retired as the division director. Most of the sites, cleanup sites and all that, had a chance to take a bite out of those when I needed to. I also went to the classroom. I went and taught at Grants High School for, about 7 years. I taught in McKinley County for 1 year, and I taught AP Environmental Science. Okay, I think and Francie can help me with the demographics, but most of the kids that I had in my class were Native American kids, Acoma, Laguna, Navajo Nation kids. I enjoyed teaching these guys, great students, but they would always ask me, because Chapter 17 in a curriculum for AP Environmental Science is In-Situ. So we learned a lot about that. We spent a lot of time on it. So it was really cool to go to Acoma and see one of my students, and she goes, "Hey, we're going to talk about ISR today." I'm like, "Yeah, I think so. That's a good deal." I'm glad people listened a little bit. But anyway, that's kind of what happened there. You know, as far as being an ex-regulator, we've got regulatory agencies looking over our shoulder for everything. The NRC, NMED, MMD, OSC, and forgive me, I'm ex-government, so the acronyms will come out. You know, you can take the government out of the person, but the person in the, you know, one of those deals. So anyway, we had a chance to go up to Crow Butte. Again, thanks to some good people, we got a chance. We invited lots of people, but it's tough to get people to come and leave their job for a couple, 2-3 days and come and go on a tour. And that was kind of what we did. But let's move on. Let me have my next slide here. Again, Grants Energy, that's us, that's our colors, environmentally responsible. Okay, here's a Crow Butte site right here. Remember, it's a nuclear facility site where they extract uranium in the ISR process. When we saw this, we were driving over there, and people were saying, "Well, when are we going to get to the site? When are we going to get to the site?" And what happened was, one of the guys, there was a security guard there, and said, "Hey, just be careful." He stopped us. "Be careful. We know you guys are here. Be careful driving through the site." And we kind of looked at each other, and I said, "Hey, Stanley, what did the guy say? When are we going to get to this?" Because we all grew up in Grants. We remember the tailings and the pits and the excavations and the head frames and all that stuff. None of that stuff exists. In our process, it won't exist either. So again, this is a picture of it, and we'll get more into it. Let's go. I want to thank, let me have the next slide, please. I want to thank Cameco for allowing us to come. Like Daria said, we're going to try to do more of these tours, and again, we want people that are interested in it to come along with us. So that's kind of what we wanted there. So let me introduce some of our panelists here. I'll start with George Garcia. George is a proud veteran of the Marine Corps. I appreciate that. He's a very good person that we worked with, and I'd like George to explain what he saw. Go ahead, George.
Good morning. Good morning. I was a uranium baby. What do I mean by that? My family moved to Grants the year I was born. That's 1960. I know for a lot of folks that's a long time ago. It was after the Civil War, I will assure you of that. But my childhood, I grew up in the 60s and 70s in the Grants area. A lot of my family and friends worked in the uranium industry. And when I graduated high school, I went to the Marine Corps. That was a passion of mine, served for 20 years. When I came back to Grants, I taught at Grants High School for 19 years. A lot of the kids I taught, I went to high school with their parents, from Mesita all the way to the Baca chapter house, from San Mateo down to the ice caves. So I interacted with a lot of their family. So when I retired during COVID, I was asked to run for the city council, which I did. I got elected, so when this came up again about uranium, the first thing that comes to our mind in Grants is we've heard that before. The next thing, as Charles was saying, the head frames and everything like that, we saw what it did to the landscape. So I wanted personally to go to Crow Butte for myself to see what impact it would have on the land. Because we've seen how modern technology can destroy, because there's a lot of cultures out there. There's a lot of land grant communities, our Pueblo, Navajo cultures that are out there, our Blue Water communities, our Mormon missionaries. There's a lot of cultures out there that the land is sacred to them. So this visit to Crow Butte was very important to me to see firsthand what it would exactly do to our environment. So that's why I was interested in going down there. Thank you.
Good deal. Thank you, George. We'll hand the mic over to Stanley. And Stanley Miranda, we're talking about wrestling. I wrestled with a guy, Stanley Miranda, was a little nervous. But Stanley Michael is a lifelong San Mateo resident. Spent a lot of time growing up as far as walking around our site. Heck of an athlete, but I'd like Stanley to kind of give us his views.
Good morning. My name is Stanley Michael, and I'll just give you a brief history of myself. I'm a fourth generation miner. I'm currently a coal miner. My two great-grandfathers on my mom's side, as well as my grandfather, were all underground coal miners right here in Dawson, New Mexico. If you know where that's at, up there by Cimarron, northern part of New Mexico there. And they were my great-grandfathers were migrants from Mexico, and moved there and started a family and worked in that mine there for Phillips Dodge back in the day. And that's where my mom was the oldest of four, and that's where she was born and raised and stuff. And then on my dad's side, my grandparents were migrants from Lebanon, right there to the San Mateo, where I currently live in the same home that my dad and his 11 brothers and sisters were raised in. So there was 12 in that family, and my grandmother even lost 3 through miscarriages. So there was 15 total that my grandparents had in that area of San Mateo, in that home, on that property. And what brought them to this country was they were Christians, and they wanted to escape the different religions of Muslim and everything there, and they wanted a new life, and they wanted to set roots. And that's what they did there in San Mateo. I mean, they set roots. When I'm telling you roots is, we had a big ranch, lots of property, irrigation, big orchard, everything you can imagine what you needed to raise a family of that size. And that's the great part about San Mateo. It's passionate to me because I currently live there, and I currently still work in a mine close to there, a coal mine, 10 minutes from the house. And I'm very fortunate to have a good paying job locally there where I grew up, which is a rarity. You don't have that. A commute anywhere else now to go to work is 45 more minutes, to get from one place to another. And then the sad part of it is people from my generation, there's very few that still live in San Mateo. And if they do, there's 2 in particular that are my generation that work with me at that particular coal mine. And then the other ones in part of my generation currently work at Rio Grande Resources, which is the cleanup of the uranium project there in San Mateo. So, like I said, I got a passionate for San Mateo, and why? Because my grandparents worked hard to build what they built, what to take care of. And this ISR project is amazing. It's being done on the property that my grandparents owned. And they currently, at that time, they sold it to Gulf. They sold that property to Gulf. Gulf was the initial uranium mine there going on at that time. And it was all about feeding 25. I have currently one of my cousins here today, and we talk about that every time. And my mother used to bring that up, 25. And they say, what do you mean 25? Well, my dad and 2 brothers, part of the Michael Corporation, there was them, their wives, and there was 19 of us kids. So that's what made up the 25. And they solely depended at that time, when they sold that property to Gulf and all that, to them to start mining into our ore body that we had there, and that could support our family. And you're talking 25 people, it's a lot of people to support. And like I said, I was passionate about everything about San Mateo because I currently reside there. I have a vineyard there. I grow cornfield there. We irrigate fields there for hay, everything else. So when I initially heard of what Grants Energy was about and what they were going to do, first thing that came to my mind is, oh, here we go again. And back to the uranium part, And the reason why I'm so close to the uranium part too is my grandfather wasn't just a coal miner for 20 years. He was also a uranium miner there at Kerr-McGee in Grants, New Mexico for 25 years underground. And he had 45 years of mining. And he always said, he always called me Cricket. And that was my nickname from my grandfather. And he says, Cricket, you got to follow the game. He says, that's the only way you're ever going to feed your family. And he goes, that's what brought me to Grants, and that's what brought him to San Mateo. That's what brought my mother to meet my father. And my mother was also working at the Marcus mine there, underground. And she was a graduate from Trinidad, Colorado, where she went to school. And after she met my dad and they started having kids, they had my sister and so on and so forth, she quit the mining to be a housewife there in San Mateo. So, but to go back to about Grants Energy coming in and doing this, I can remember making a phone call to Anita Wilcox Pena. Her family grew up there in San Mateo too, the Penas, and calling her at Rio Grande Resources and said, hey, what the heck's going on here? What's going on here? Seriously? I said, she said, wait, we're going to have a meeting. Come to the meeting, get a view of what they're going to do. She says, it's not like what we grew up with. And I said, okay, I can live with that. So I went to the meeting, and honestly, I made these guys really answer some questions that I wanted to know, and they probably thought, oh my gosh, look who's coming. And I grew up with Charles, so I've known him a majority of my life. He spent times on our ranch there with my family, running around with my cousins and everything. And at the time that I met with them and everything, I was still skeptical about all of it. I thought, oh, no, and they said, no, come with us to Nebraska. Come and look at this project that they got going there in Nebraska, and then see what you think. And like Charles says, when we drove up to the facility, we're going down the road, and we all get out to look at the field and where all these were at. And like he said, we were looking around and was like, this is a uranium site? Are you kidding me? And no longer than we were standing there about 2 minutes, here comes a buggy of Amish people full of their family. And I'm being honest with you, you would be blown away. You were like, Amish people out here in this uranium field? Are you kidding me? And they were just went right by us as we're standing out there. And I could see the view of hay fields that they were growing hay just on the edge of it, the housing projects. The trees were the exact poly-original pine trees and trees that had been there since God put them there. And all this was going on around it, and you're thinking, wow, this ain't what I expected. And it changed my mind. It changed my mind that quick after seeing that. And like I said, you could see in the pictures there's houses, people living right next to the facility right there, and it's like, it's beautiful. It was awesome. And my grandparents and my dad and my uncles knew we had this rich uranium underneath the soil that could support our families, that could take care of the community, which we all lived it there in Grants. I mean, that's what kept Grants' heartbeat going, was the uranium industry. And we were proud to be the uranium capital of the world. We had a big sign when you drove into Grants that said, welcome to Grants, uranium capital of the world, and it had the uranium symbol on it. And it was like, it made us proud. I mean, when you said you were from Grants, they would say, well, where's Grants at? Well, the uranium capital of the world. Oh, yeah, I know where that's at. But it brought so many people into that community for work to support their families. And it was something great. Like Charles said, it was the greatest place to grow up, greatest place to live. And anything more I can say about that is, it'd be great to go back to putting Grants where it needs to be, where we can keep our younger generation employed with good paying jobs, where they can stay where their parents grew up and where their grandparents grew up and where they can support their families. And that's the biggest, most important thing. And I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate all the work you guys are doing and what it's take to get to this point.
Well, good deal. Thank you, Stanley. Let's let Andrew Valencia speak here. Andrew didn't go with us to Crow Butte. He will probably go with us next time. He's the city manager of the city of Grants, and I want to throw a shout out to Beverly Michael. We got a resolution from the city of Grants as far as supporting our project. It's online, you guys can see it. We spent a lot of time talking to people in and around the area. Many public meetings. Been out to the chapter house at Pruitt, the Baca chapter house, visited with Laguna, with Acoma, down to Dezuni, went down there and talked to those ladies. Everybody down there, Isleta. We're trying to bring everybody in. If you guys don't know, there's an official process that goes along with this. This company has been reaching out for about a year and a half now. When I came on board, it's about a year I've been on board, and I talk to people at Walmart, at the games. I mean, I do more talking about ISR in the community than I do in my office, which is okay, I don't mind. I just told, I was watching the game and I said, hey, I gotta watch my kid hit here, man. I'll talk about ISR in a minute here. Let me watch a game for 10 minutes and then I will get back to ISR. But again, with the native groups too, we're reaching out. We want to talk. We want to get some dialogue, good dialogue, and the tough questions. I know out at Pruitt, we got some tough questions. I was a former Department of Transportation commissioner, and I gave a presentation because of the trucking element, and people are always asking about how do you ship the material and what have you. Got beat up pretty good in that meeting. As a commissioner, I was presenting, but that's okay. I'll take the tough questions. And if I can't answer your question, there's a room full of people in San Diego or wherever we need to answer those questions technically. We got a good group of technical people. We're learning from the presentations before. We're learning from Heathgate. We've got our guys from Australia up here. If you want to get on their good side, take them to Lottaburger. They love Lottaburger, so that's a good thing. I'm going to take these guys to Lottaburger before they leave. Anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew. He's going to kind of give us a background on what's happening now in the city of Grants. That's a big thing. Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you. Good morning, Andrew Valencia, City Manager, City of Grants. Let me just give you a little bit of history of myself. I'm born and raised in the Grants area. My parents, in the same aspect, grew up there, raised there. We talk about uranium mines, we talk about coal mines, and we talk about what brought people to the Grants area. My grandfather and his brothers, they came to Grants for the fluorspar mines. The fluorspar, the gypsum. I mean, people that don't know about the fluorspar, they mine that so that it hardens the steel for the World War. So, the legacy of what is going on and what has continued to go on in the Grants, Cibola County area as far as mining, it has been there for many, many years, way before we even talk about uranium. And as a manager, you think, okay, well, what is your role? What are you trying to do for the city of Grants? And when we met with Grants Energy the first time I met with them in my office, the first thing I thought of as a manager, what can it do for the city of Grants? What can it do for the surrounding areas, Milan, San Mateo, Laguna, Acoma, but yet again, how would it affect us? How can we move past the old uranium mining and the legacy that it left behind? I feel like Grants has always been the big brother of the community. We had done things to help make sure that Cibola County survived. When we split counties, we were Valencia County. We took a hit, but we seemed to survive, and we keep pushing forward. And I think the only way that we can do this, and I was skeptical as many, what is Grants Energy going to do? What is going to be left behind for my grandchildren? Because I don't want that to happen. What is going to be left behind for those many, many individuals that are going to live there for the rest of their life? I don't want what I had to grow up with. I want changes. And the only way we can change is through technology and getting better when it comes to what we're doing for our properties, our environment. And we do need to hold all these companies to the fire and say, you know what, you're going to make sure that you do what you're told, do what you're asking, and make sure that we're thriving. And our communities will thrive if we support one another, wherever we come from, whatever community. And I think it's some of the best things that I can do as a manager and as somebody for the city is support industry that will benefit not only just Grants, but the entire communities all the way around. And Grants Energy is a step forward. Am I saying it's the solution? Absolutely not. We have to look in other areas. We have to look at what we can do to make sure that we survive for many, many years, and our our families are willing to stay there in Grants and be a lifer. I was a lifer. My daughter isn't a lifer. You know, my son is. So, you know, I come from the fire service for 33 years. You know, I left the fire service to go work at the coal mine. Now, it wasn't for me. Went back to the fire service. Now I'm in the city manager position. So I look at it as, you know, I'm in the fire all the time. So, but I don't mind that. So, but that's a little bit about me and what I expect from Grants Energy. And I hope that helps.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Again, this presentation is about what we saw, what our panelists saw up at Crow Butte and the trip and all that kind of stuff. We'd love some questions from the audience. That's I can give you remarks and comments all day, but again, these gentlemen here are willing to speak out on their what they found and what they saw and what their expectations are. So if there's any questions, we'll field those now. Yes, Janet.
I have a question for George.
Excuse me? Oh, George.
Yeah. You said that you wanted to go to Nebraska because you wanted to see it for yourself. I'd like to know what you saw and what you were left with from the trip.
As I said, growing up, our field trips on a Sunday afternoon, our father would take us out to the mines and the mills, you know, and see what's going on out there, the big trucks and everything, and we were amazed by that. But again, there was a lot of piles of uranium, a lot of big vehicles, head frames that dotted the landscape. I expected to see similar. As Stanley said when we got there, I'm from New Mexico. When I saw this buggy come by, I had to take a picture. I hope it wasn't disrespectful, but I had to show my wife, dear, look what I saw. You don't see that in New Mexico. And I asked the gentleman that gave us the tour, I go, how do they feel about this? He goes, they've just moved into the area from Minnesota. They're purchasing up all this land, and they let us monitor their wells, and they're good with that. And that had me thinking that the land that they're going to be using is going to be in better condition because of this than if we had allowed some other industry to go in there. You see antelope running across there. You would not see that before. So that's what impressed me the most, the limited amount of footprint. And when I was told in the Grants area, because the uranium is so good and dense, the footprint would even be smaller. So, and all I saw was these little spots, and I'm like, what are those? Those are the monitoring wells, the injection wells, and that's it. And the water's okay. And again, these conservative people were okay with that. And I said, well, our people will be okay with that. Because one of the things, as I said, I had a lot of family members that worked in the mines. So I had to see them get older and the health issues, walking around with oxygen bottles. As family members, we don't want to see that. But as of late, I've talked to a lot of the miners that worked with my father. He worked at Kerr-McGee for over 30 years. My uncle, Filimon Gonzalez, if anyone ever worked at Kerr-McGee, they knew this gentleman. I was by his bedside when he was dying of lung cancer. And he looked at me and he said, Mijito, if I had to do it all over again, I would. Because it's more than just money. It gave them a sense of purpose, as they said. I mentioned earlier that my parents, they were from the Depression-era generation. So for a lot of folks in that area, it brought them from lower class to middle class. And you walk around the cemetery in Grants and you'll see on the headstones, miner, 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 mill worker. They were proud of the identity it gave them. And that's what impressed me the most, is we're not going to have these issues. And that's what's important to us, again, for our children. Because, yeah, we want them to learn the culture, but I taught at Grants High School for 19 years. They still want their cell phones. They still want their social media. They still want their rap music, whether they're coming from the reservation or a land-grant community. They want modern technology. How are we going to fill that? To me, I see the windmills, and I'm like, Our ancestors wouldn't like that. The solar panels that are out there dotting the landscape where no cattle can graze. So I said, there's got to be a better way. And when they came up with this solution, that's what impressed me the most when we were down there. To see a farming community, it was a lot more greener than New Mexico, but the same open fields. And that's what impressed me the most.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
George.
thank you for your service.
Yes, sir. The gentleman in the white.
What about?
Good morning. My name is Jeff Epting. I'm from the Pueblo of Acoma, Natural Resources Director. Mr. Lundstrom, this question is directed to you.
Yes,
We've
sir.
met a couple of times with your office or your people there, but you told us that this place in Crow Butte didn't exist, that they weren't doing that. Then now you're telling us a different story again, saying that it does exist. We were at Isleta last month, and you told us that that you misspoke, that this mining up there didn't exist. But you're telling everybody here that it is existing. So what is it? You know, is it yes or no? You know, and you know, we as the tribes, we didn't get an invite either to Crow Butte. You know, it would have been nice for us to go up there. And gentlemen that are up there on the panel, I appreciate your honesty. However, you know, we have a lot of doubts because, you know, what's the contamination process over there? What you know, what did you see? You're not talking about that. You're talking about everything is great, but nobody said, oh, you know, the people are sick with cancer. You, sir, you just said your relatives passed away as miners. Well, same here with my family. My uncles, my grandpas, my father, they all died of cancer from working in the mines. So to me, there's a big risk. And I think that, you know, you had the other presenter telling us that, you know, you're going to build relations and you get out there, you know, but we can see through what you're dishing out. And you're already trying to build something great to us, but we already know we can see through it, and you're not being honest and upfront because we care about our water, our land, our air, our people. We're going to be there after you as the mines leave. We're still going to be there. We think about our water, our aquifer. How is that going to affect us downwind? We have the support of the Pueblo of Isleta, the Pueblo of Laguna, the Pueblo of Zuni. We're all against it. We're all against the mining. And you're not being upfront and truthful, but thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments, but I'm being upfront and truthful. We'll show that. I think, like Daria just mentioned, we don't own the facility at Crow Butte. We don't own that. It's owned by another company, and that's maybe where the confusion came in. But at no time did I say we were not going to go up there. And we probably asked 15 to 20 people to go, to get them to come. They couldn't make the time. You've just started with the Pueblo. I remember you telling us that. You left the federal government and came to work with us. You're more than welcome to go on the next trip. Again, we couldn't take everybody, and the people that we did ask, it was very difficult for them to get off of work and what have you. Thank you for your comments.